Thanks for joining in. I've asked Dave Wright with Cottonwood Title to come and talk with us about what's going on in the legislative session this year. There's a couple of things happening that could change the way real estate is being done, that if you're involved in real estate transactions, you really ought to understand better. So Dave, what's going on?
Well, there's a few bills that are going through the legislature right now, and one of them is getting probably the most attention, which is Senate Bill 30.
Okay, so what's going on with Senate Bill 30?
Senate Bill 30 right now, I'll give you kind of a few highlights, but basically it is the reporting of information to the recorder's and the assessor's office on commercial and residential sales.
It's very formal synopsis. I like that.
Yes.
So what does that mean for a normal person?
Have to keep it formal because any opinions are my own and not those of Cottonwood Title or the ULTA or ALTA.
That's nice.
Yes.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
So basically what they're saying is that any sale that title companies handle, right?
And not just a sale, but a transfer? Is that
transfer,
right?
As I understand it, it's also any transfer. So any grant deed, a warranty deed, quitclaim deed, or anything along
Anything
those
that changes
lines.
who's on title from party 1 to party 2 or party 1 to party 1 and 2, any change to title.
We have to submit with that deed to the recorder's office information on the sale, including the purchase price.
Okay. And that would be for all transactions?
As far as I understand it, yes, any grant deed.
So right now, any grant deed for any real property, commercial, residential, whatever, the title company who records that would have to verify, would have to disclose what money changed hands for that grant deed to occur.
Yes, exactly. And that may be zero consideration, right? If you were just taking someone off of title or putting it into a trust or putting it into an LLC. But as I understand it and how the bill is currently structured, we would have to then present a document at closing to the seller or to the grantor, whoever's signing the property away, and say, here's information that we are presenting and required to present to the recorder's office, who then in turn, the recorder's office has said, it's said in the bill, the recorder's office then will share that information with the assessor's office, and the assessor's office is in charge of assigning tax rates and fair market value and everything else along those lines.
So if I read that right, it seems like the assessor is saying, well, we're not going to use it to determine value, but we'll probably use it if you dispute the valuation.
Yeah.
Is that a good reading of it?
So the bill says that the assessor's office will use that information generally to assess as far as taxes. Those there are some that are skeptical that that would be the case, that it would just be general, that they would in fact use that and assign that at the actual value. The other is if you were to dispute it. I think the bill leads for the days of us disputing our tax rates. Those would be over because they're going to have that information at their fingertips.
You bought the property for $660. It's assessed for $600. You better just be grateful because you can't dispute it because they've got the value. Okay, so that would make the reporting of those sales to the assessor's office, which would then be used in general terms for assessment. One concern that we've talked about on this is that could lead to a transfer fee or transfer tax.
Yeah, so there's two concerns that those that oppose the bill, from what I understand, have two concerns. One is the transfer tax, and number two is that it's one step closer to a full disclosure state. Utah is one of 12 states that is currently and remains non-disclosure, meaning that purchase price is not a matter of public record.
Gotcha.
Okay, and so they're saying this is one step closer to that, and we love to preserve that
privacy and
the
not
privacy,
stuff.
absolutely, our privacy rights and everything else. With regards to the transfer tax, though, an interesting thing that a carrot that was dangled with this bill is that there is a resolution that accompanies the bill that's going through the Senate and the House, which says that the Utah State Constitution will be amended to prohibit transfer taxes.
Period. End of story.
Yes, which this is a great thing. Right?
That would be awesome.
And this is a big carrot that.
So just in case somebody's not familiar, because transfer taxes aren't a thing here in Utah, what's a transfer tax?
Transfer tax is exactly what it sounds like. When you transfer title, when you sell, there is a tax rate assessed on the purchase price, and a seller, buyer, it can be a negotiation point, but has to pay the local government that tax associated with the sale.
So if you have a 0.75% transfer tax and you sell a $500,000 property, you're going to pay
$3,500 or whatever that math
$4,500, $4,000 is going to go, whatever that number is, as a tax paid to The taxing entity. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that presents its own set of challenges.
We just showed that we can't do math, by the way, so
Absolutely.
That's perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
No math.
Yeah.
So if it's $100,000 and 75%,
yes,
$750.
How about that? That's what I like.
Yeah.
So, yeah. In any case, so we're talking about it's going to be another expense that a seller or buyer, another negotiation point, another friction point throughout the process. And so I think generally everyone likes to see that not on the table. And
so the idea is that would go away. The possibility of that would go away.
Possibility of it would go away.
But the trade-off being that there would be a disclosure of any vesting change, how much money changed hands if there was money that changed hands.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
what else is going on with Senate Bill 30? What else would that do?
Well, so here's what we're looking at. And the whole genesis behind the bill also is that during COVID, homeowners experienced a massive increase in valuations and subsequently property taxes. The commercial side did not experience that. So what many people don't know is that the multiple listing service and some other entities share bulk data already, and they have for years on the residential
with
side.
With the assessors.
So they can assess a valuation, and get those tax rates and tax.
When you say bulk data, we're talking about like trending data in general, like
all I know is bulk general data,
whatever that may mean.
Anecdotally, I don't think they're going and saying, here's a list of houses and here's what they sold
here's
for.
what's happened on a whole. Here's prices, homes sold.
I believe it is. In fact, my opinion is that it's bulk data, and so they are sharing that, but there's no mechanism on the commercial side, and so many feel that on the commercial side they have not been paying their fair share.
Gotcha.
And so what's happened then since this bill was proposed is that there is a group of 6 of the largest commercial brokerages in the state have come together and signed a memorandum saying, hey, we're willing to share this information.
Okay.
And the talking points that they're giving are they want to pay their fair share. They understand a lot of them are residential homeowners, but they want to pay their fair share of property taxes. And number 2, I think another talking point that they have is that they want to find an organic private solution. That they want to.
I'm just laughing because they want to pay their fair share, or they're willing to pay more if it will stave off the disclosure. Maybe. I mean, that's my cynical
side. You can interpret that how
we'll say they want to pay their fair share.
If you were a cynic, you would say that.
Yes,
right?
Perhaps.
But
the bottom line being, they're saying we'll share this information.
Yeah, and I think one of their motivators also is that they want to find a private solution as opposed to a government mandated solution,
which is great.
Which I think is great, right? And that's the essence, I think, of local government and democracy, right? Is finding solutions
that don't require legislation
and that don't require us doing something at the point of a bayonet,
which is always nice.
And so I think that actually has gotten some good momentum. And so the assessors along the Wasatch Front and this group of 6 commercial brokerages are in talks right now. And the general feeling from these talks are that it actually will serve to shelve the bill.
Oh, good.
And so we won't have to, at title companies, we won't have to share the information on a sale by sale or transfer by transfer basis as far as sale price or consideration, which is a win. It's a win for us.
I would think it would be a win for agents, buyers, sellers, anybody involved, anybody who's dealing, especially real estate investors. I mean, if somebody's dealing with maybe a seller financing kind of situation or a private sale or a family transaction, that just opens up a big can of worms in my mind.
It does. And I mean, just talking about just the day-to-day as far as what I do, just that alone makes me not super excited about this bill, just because, again, it's another document that we're presenting at closing saying, by the way, the county's now going
to have to do this new thing.
And it's a new thing, and it's just another thing that, the process sometimes has friction anyways, and so this could potentially provide more.
So Senate Bill 30 would require title companies to disclose the amount that the property is sold for with any transfer.
Yeah.
And would require that be provided to the assessor, who could then use that for their purposes, general purposes, or for for resolving disputes. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you like that, if you don't like it, you got to figure out who your local representative is and write a strongly worded letter.
But the important thing is, right?
It could be a nicely worded letter, I guess.
It could be nicely worded. Start with, I'm a tax-paying citizen.
Yes.
Because usually what follows that is just always
good
pleasant.
For the elected official.
Absolutely. No, so I think there's that. But also, I mean, we're talking about the essence of democracy. And so we'll have in a link on this the actual bill itself, in which you could read through if you want. The meat of the bill is in the first 5 pages or so you can get a feel for it. And reach out to your representative and let them know if you're in favor or if you're against it.
Yeah.
And why. And I think things like that can make a difference.
And you got to do it now.
Absolutely.
This is a now thing.
Okay. Yeah, but just know, from what I understand, there's good momentum to shelve the bill, or at least the aspect of the bill which has most people nervous,
the disclosure
which is
piece.
The disclosure piece.
And then along with that, the amendment to remove transfer tax. Okay, so there's another bill, House Bill.
Just real quick, the resolution would still survive, as I understand it. Yeah,
gotcha.
So that resolution would
shelve
survive.
the bill, but the resolution for the constitutional
As
amendment.
I understand it, yes. And so, nothing is set in stone, obviously, because the session or the legislature.
But that's something that if you like
session.
the idea, that would be another reason to say, hey, I love the idea of eliminating the transfer tax.
We may be voting on that in November. So if that resolution passes, independent of Senate Bill 30, if that resolution passes the House and Senate, then we're going to be voting for it in November.
That'll be a big deal.
Which would be a big deal.
That's a lot of money for anybody that ever buys or sells. Somewhere along the line, you pay for it.
And Utah, historically speaking, right, and relative to most of the nation, believe it or not, is a fiscally responsible state, right? I know it's a popular talking point to say, well, no government spends money wisely or anything along those lines. Utah, relatively speaking, has done a great job.
It's like graded on a curve.
Our property, yes, absolutely.
Graded on a curve.
But our property taxes are lower than most. Like
They
if you go to California, I'm from Illinois originally, and the property taxes there are astronomical.
And the transfer taxes, I think Texas has a transfer tax. California, I think, has a transfer tax. So it gets really expensive anytime you're selling or buying. And so this would put that on hold. Okay,
so I think a lot of people just want to preserve that kind of that solidarity that we have as far as fiscal responsibility as it pertains to that, not necessarily shove more money at the government.
Okay, beautiful. Senate Bill 30.
Yes.
House Bill 36.
37.
We're going to move past 36.
Yes.
Over the top, leapfrog.
Don't know what 36 is, but I do know what 37 is.
It's not important.
Briefly, 37, title nerds and real estate nerds get excited about it, but 37 just assumes that two people owning a property together or purchasing a property together, it is going to be assumed that they are joint tenants. And joint tenancy is, heaven forbid, one person on title passes away, the second gets the title without going through a probate process.
Which is expensive and time-consuming and burdensome.
It is. It can be very expensive, and it can be very, very time-consuming.
So right now, you have a husband and wife who purchase a home, and they go on title as Joe husband and Jill wife, and that's it. They're joint tenants.
Joe and Jill,
but Joe and Jill, husband and wife.
Husband and wife are joint tenants,
but
as
Joe
it
and
stands
Jill,
now,
tenants in common.
Yeah, and it's a little bit tricky because oftentimes lenders will dictate how the title is taken, right?
And when so you might not put as joint tenants.
They just might say Joe and Jill and just have their names. And most people that aren't educated to this, say, okay, cool, great, we're both on title. Well, Joe passes away, unfortunately. Then Jill now hit 50%, as the law currently states, 50% of his interest goes to his estate. And then Jill has to file probate then to become a personal representative of his estate and get that 50%.
So it's a messy, complex deal. And this bill would make it so if you don't, the default would now be joint tenants instead of the default being this tenancy.
Yeah, which I'm hugely in favor of this because most people, when they take title, they don't understand joint tenancy. They don't understand tenants in common and the effects
I think they assume that that's the way it would work.
Yeah. And so this bill shifts towards, I think, the default of what most people assume and want when they're taking title.
So you could still buy as tenants in common if you're buying with a partner or something, and that was the intent was to separate the property, but that would no longer be the default.
Absolutely. Second marriages, anything along those lines where they have their own kids from other marriages.
Partnerships, whatever it is.
Tenants in common. You just now need to specify that because the default will be, if the bill is passed, the default's going to be.
House Bill 37.
House Bill 37.
So if you're a title nerd, where you just really like to have a title be understandable and make sense, then House Bill 37, I think, would be a good one to say, hey, this is a great idea and absolutely push through.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you coming on.
You bet.